When Liverpool lost Trent Alexander-Arnold to Real Madrid, people thought it was the end of an era. Trent wasn't just a right-back, he was Liverpool's entire creative heartbeat. Take him out and the system collapses, right? Well, not exactly. Because, in the most unexpected twist, Arne Slot may have found a new Trent. And it's not a defender. It's Dominic Szoboszlai. This is how Szoboszlai is turning into the new Trent. Last season could have gone much better for Arne Slot. In his very first year in the Premier League, he delivered the title. Liverpool looked like a team reborn, pressing with intensity, playing with balance, and most importantly, finding consistency again. A big part of that success was because Slot managed to get the best out of players who had looked a little lost in Klopp's final years. And at the heart of it all was Trent Alexander-Arnold. He wasn't just solid, he was influential. 4 goals and 10 assists in 49 games don't even tell the full story of how important he was. Slot leaned on him to control games from that hybrid role, sometimes a right-back, sometimes an extra midfielder, and it worked. Liverpool had a rhythm, they had control, and they had that spark of creativity that only Trent could provide. But then came the shock of the summer. Real Madrid came calling, and Trent made the move. And this wasn't like losing any other right-back. For Liverpool, it was losing the heartbeat of their entire hybrid system, the player who dictated tempo and gave them a completely unique dynamic. Slot suddenly had to figure out how to replace something that, in truth, was almost impossible to replace. And that's where we need to take a closer look at what exactly Trent gave Liverpool, and why his departure was so much more than just another transfer. When people talk about Trent, they often reduce him to just his assists, but the truth is, his influence went way beyond numbers. He completely changed the way Liverpool played. From right back, he wasn't just overlapping and crossing like a traditional fullback. He was stepping into midfield, dictating the rhythm, and acting almost like a deep-lying playmaker. What made him so special was his passing range. He could hit those diagonal switches to the far side, find runners in behind with precision, or thread balls into the feet of forwards between the lines. That meant Liverpool didn't always need a number 10 to unlock defenses, because Trent was doing that job from deep. On top of that, he gave them set-piece quality, corners, free kicks, even direct shots at goal. Every dead ball felt like a chance, and then there was his vision. Trent just had that ability to see things 2 or 3 steps ahead, something you don't get from most defenders. He wasn't just feeding the attack, he was controlling the tempo of the entire game. For Liverpool, he was the player who connected everything together, the one who made their system tick. That's why his departure to Madrid hurt so much. You weren't just losing a defender, you were losing your architect, your metronome, and your creative outlet all in one. And once he left, Slot had to make a huge decision. How do you replace something that unique? And that's exactly where Jeremy Frimpong comes into the story. After Trent's departure, Slot knew he couldn't just replace him with someone identical, because there isn't another Trent. So he looked for a different profile, and that's where Jeremy Frimpong came in. Frimpong is not a playmaker in disguise, he's a weapon. His game is built on pace, direct running, and constantly pushing defenders back. Where Trent slowed the game down to control it, Frimpong speeds it up to stretch it. Slot wanted that chaos on the right side, someone who could break lines with dribbles and runs instead of passing range. And to be fair, Frimpong fit that description perfectly. He carried the ball into dangerous spaces, created overloads in attack, and offered that unpredictability defenders hate. But he wasn't Trent. He couldn't step into midfield and control possession in the same way. The plan was working in parts until Frimpong's injury. That's when things got complicated. Slot was left without a natural option to cover that position, so he couldn't afford to let Liverpool's structure collapse. He needed a solution quickly, and that's when he turned to the last player anyone expected, Dominic Szoboszlai. If you're enjoying the video so far, please smash that like button and hit the subscribe button too. Thank you. Before the idea of him at right back even came up, Szoboszlai's place in the team was already under pressure. Last season, he was used mainly as a number 10, the role where he was supposed to be the creative link in midfield. But the problem was simple. He wasn't producing enough. The goals weren't coming, and his end product wasn't at the level Liverpool needed from that position. Then came the signing of Florian Wirtz, and that changed everything. Wirtz immediately looked like a natural fit for the number 10 role, which meant Szoboszlai was displaced, and when you look at the rest of the midfield, those spots were already spoken for. McAllister was too important as the organizer, and Gravenberch was already making his case as the dynamic defensive midfielder. Suddenly, Szoboszlai didn't have a clear role. So, when Frimpong got injured, Slot had to think outside the box. He needed someone who could cover the right side but still bring control to the game. And with Szoboszlai's stamina, technical ability, and comfort on the ball, he became the gamble. Slot put him at right back, and that single decision ended up reshaping his career. And this is where it gets really interesting, because Szoboszlai in that new role has been nothing short of a revelation. When Szoboszlai was first shifted into the right-back role, most people thought it was just a short-term fix when Frimpong recovered, but it's quickly become clear this isn't a patchwork solution, it's a reinvention. Slot has essentially unlocked a version of Szoboszlai that feels more complete, more influential, and arguably more valuable than he ever looked as a number 10. The most striking part of this new role is how natural he looks inverting into midfield. Usually, when you ask a fullback to step inside, it feels awkward. You're taking a defender out of their comfort zone. With Szoboszlai, it's the opposite. He's a midfielder by trade, so when he receives the ball in central spaces, he looks comfortable, calm, and purposeful. In the Arsenal game, for example, he completed the second most passes of anyone on the pitch, and the most passes into the final third. That shows you just how involved he was in dictating Liverpool's play, not as a midfielder higher up, but as an inverted right-back starting deeper. What really caught the eye in that same game was the variety of his passing. He wasn't just recycling possession, he was constantly progressing it. His pass map showed everything, from quick link-ups through midfield to line-breaking passes into attackers, and even a trademark diagonal switch, the kind of pass people used to only associate with Trent. That switch alone was proof that Slot has found a way to replace Liverpool's lost volume passer. And this role hasn't just elevated him on the ball. Off the ball, Szoboszlai has been just as important. Slot's pressing structure, it often looks like a 4-2-4 or even a 4-2-3-1, depending on where Wirtz positions himself. That system leaves huge responsibility on the right side because Salah stays high, conserving his energy for attacking moments. Someone has to cover the space behind him, press aggressively, and still recover defensively. And Szoboszlai has the engine to do it. Against Arsenal, he won the joint most tackles and registered the second most clearances. For a player adapting to right back, those numbers aren't just good, they're outstanding. And it's more than just stats. Watching the game, you could see how tenacious he was in one-on-one situations. Martinelli barely troubled him all night, and when Arsenal rotated, bringing on fresh legs like Eberechi Eze, Szoboszlai still had the pace and determination to match him down the line, get back into position, and win the ball. That defensive reliability is something Liverpool often lacked with Trent. As brilliant as Trent was on the ball, he was never front-footed defensively and didn't always have the recovery pace to bail himself out. Szoboszlai, on the other hand, thrives in those duels. The numbers back it up too. Since moving to right back, his duel success rate has risen from 43% last season to over 52%. His touches are up, his passing accuracy has climbed, and his passes into the final third have nearly doubled. Those improvements aren't by accident. They show a player whose qualities are finally being used in the right areas of the pitch. Another big advantage is how this role reshapes Liverpool's balance. By trusting Szoboszlai to do the running and pressing on the right side, Slot frees Salah to stay higher up the pitch, closer to goal. That's massive, because it means Liverpool's biggest threat doesn't have to burn energy tracking back. Szoboszlai essentially absorbs the defensive workload, while still offering the passing range and ball progression that Liverpool used to get from Trent. And perhaps the most interesting detail, he's not just surviving in this position, he's thriving. The Arsenal match highlighted it perfectly. He had 49 successful passes, 4 unsuccessful, and 12 defensive actions. most of them in traditional right-back areas. That's not the profile of a midfielder awkwardly filling in. That's the profile of someone redefining the role. This is where you see Slot's tactical genius. He looked at his squad, realized the midfield was overloaded with quality, McAllister, Klavenberg, Wirtz, and found a way to keep Szoboszlai in the 11 while solving the Trent-sized hole at right back. By moving a midfielder into the position, he not only maintained control but also added defensive intensity. It's a decision that gives Liverpool balance across the pitch and keeps Salah at his most dangerous. So, what began as a forced experiment has turned into one of Slot's smartest moves yet. Szoboszlai has gone from a displaced number 10, struggling for rhythm, to a key figure who gives Liverpool control, defensive security, and a creative outlet from deep. And the more he plays there, the more it looks like this isn't temporary at all. It's the new blueprint, which naturally leads to the big question: how does Szoboszlai in this role actually compare to Trent Alexander-Arnold at his peak? Both of them operate as hybrid players, somewhere between a right-back and a midfielder. When Trent was at his best under Klopp, he was stepping into central areas, receiving the ball and dictating tempo. That's exactly what Szoboszlai is doing now. He's not hugging the touchline like a traditional fullback. He's drifting into midfield, picking up the ball in those half spaces and shaping the game from there. The other big similarity is their ability to control the rhythm of Liverpool's play. Trent used to do it with his range of passing, those switches of play, those sharp diagonals, the long balls behind defensive lines. Szoboszlai is bringing that same sense of control, just in a slightly different way. Against Arsenal, for example, he had the most line-breaking passes in the final third, and you could see how Liverpool's build-up flowed through him. He wasn't just recycling possession, he was making the team tick, much like Trent used to. And of course, both of them give Liverpool a structure where attacks can be built from wide areas instead of the traditional number 10 zone. This has been Liverpool's identity for years, creating from the flanks instead of relying heavily on central playmakers. With Trent, that means crosses, diagonals, and overloads. With Szoboszlai, it means direct running, switches, and clever passes into Salah or Núñez. The principle is the same. Liverpool's creativity comes from the right, and both players deliver it in ways few others can. But this is where the differences start to stand out, and they're just as important. Trent was always more of a long ball distributor. His biggest weapon was the ability to hit 40-yard diagonals onto a winger's foot or whip early crosses into the box. Szoboszlai, on the other hand, is more direct with the ball at his feet. He'll carry it past pressure, he'll drive into midfield, and he'll link play on the move. That changes the speed of Liverpool's transitions. Instead of waiting for a long switch, you sometimes get Szoboszlai cutting through lines himself. Then, there's the attacking output. Trent built his reputation on assists, feeding the forwards with precision delivery. Szoboszlai, though, adds a goal-scoring threat. His ball striking is already elite. We've seen it with free kicks, we've seen it with long shots, and the fact that he can step into central areas from deep, it means he can arrive in positions to finish moves himself. That's something Trent never really offered consistently, and, defensively, the contrast is even clearer. Trent's weakness was always defending transitions. He could get caught high up, and without the pace to recover, Liverpool were often exposed. Szoboszlai is the opposite. He has the energy and the legs to press aggressively, win tackles, and still recover into shape. Against Arsenal, he won the joint most tackles and handled 1v1 duels against players like Martinelli and later Eze. That balance, creativity, plus defensive reliability, it's what makes him such a different version of the role. So, when you put it all together, you see the bigger picture. Liverpool didn't just replace Trent, they reimagined him. Instead of looking for a carbon copy, Slot has taken a midfielder, dropped him into right back, and created a new type of playmaker for this team. Szoboszlai brings the same influence on games, but with a different skill set, one that makes Liverpool more dynamic and more balanced. And that's why the conversation, it isn't just about replacing Trent anymore, it's about what happens next. Because once Frimpong returns, Slot suddenly has two completely different but equally valuable options for the same position. What makes this situation even more exciting for Liverpool is that once Jeremy Frimpong is fit again, Arne Slot doesn't have to make a straight choice between him and Szoboszlai. Instead, he has the flexibility to use both in different situations, and that's where this becomes a tactical advantage rather than a headache. Think about what Frimpong offers. He's explosive, direct, and relentless in attack. Against smaller teams that sit deep and defend with numbers, his qualities are perfect. He consistently forces defenders back, stretches the pitch, and creates chaos in the box. Those runs behind the fullback open up space for others, and his speed ensures that Liverpool always has a threat to break down a low block. In those games, Frimpong's attacking power can tilt the balance in Liverpool's favour because he adds unpredictability that defenders struggle to contain. But against the bigger sides, the so-called Big Six, the demands are different. Those games often hinge on control, on being able to manage transitions, and on neutralizing inverted wingers who drift inside to overload midfield. That's where Szoboszlai becomes the better option. His ability to invert seamlessly into midfield gives Liverpool another body in central areas, which is vital against teams like Manchester City or Arsenal that dominate the ball. He presses aggressively, wins duels, and keeps possession circulating, all while still providing the passing range to launch attacks from deep. In these matches, his balance of creativity and defensive intensity make Liverpool harder to break down, while still being dangerous going forward. Slot can essentially tailor his right back to the opposition. If it's a mid-table side at Anfield, expect Frimpong to pin them back and create wave after wave of attacks. If it's a high-level clash at the Etihad, expect Szoboszlai to tuck inside, help control midfield, and deal with the threat of elite wingers cutting in. Few managers have that kind of variety in one position, and it gives Liverpool a tactical edge they didn't even have when Trent was at his best. This rotation also keeps both players fresh across a long season. With Liverpool competing in multiple competitions, having two different but equally effective options allows Slot to manage minutes without losing quality. And crucially, it means the team is no longer overly dependent on one individual to define their style of play. That was the problem with Trent. Everything went through him. Now, Slot can choose between two approaches, depending on what the game demands. And that leads us to the final part of this story, because while losing Trent was seen as the end of an era, what we're witnessing now might actually be the start of something new for Liverpool. But what do you think? Will Arne Slot stick with Szoboszlai at right back? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out the last video. Thank you.